All right, so for today's lecture, we will be talking about the immune system. Specifically for the context of Beta 106, we will be focusing on the organs of the lymphatic system. This is so because a big chunk or bulk of the immune system, we have already talked about this during Beta 105 or microscopic anatomy 1, especially the blood cells that are found in the bone marrow and the blood. So we talked about that under the connective tissue, the specialized type of connective tissue, so your hematopoietic tissue. So this time around, in support of our topic, last meeting, wherein we talked about the cardiovascular system, specifically the pipes and the plumbing and the pumping system, right? And we said that the cardiovascular system functions hand in hand with our lymphatic system because it is the lymphatic system that helps the capillary bed to absorb and handle the excess tissue fluids, and these excess tissue fluids should be brought back into the venous system. Okay, but of course, these fluid systems sometimes, or not sometimes, usually, some noxious substances, bad and foreign substances may be trapped in these fluids. So, it is the function of the lymphatic system, cells, and organs to filter this out and to destroy them before they're even recirculated back into the venous system and throughout the whole body. Okay? So, what are the major types of tissue that can be found in our lymphatic or immune system? First, let's review ourselves, no? So for the previous meetings, we were talking about so this figure shows our what? Yes, our nervous system, and this shows our cardiovascular system. And for today, we will be focusing on the lymphatic system. So what I want you guys to appreciate is that the lymphatic system is as spread out in the body of an animal, just like your nervous and your cardiovascular system, which means if you are viewing a specific histological slide under the microscope, there is a very high chance that you would be able to see structures that are under the lymphatic system, okay? Especially the lymphatic vessels, which we have talked about in the previous lecture. Okay, well, aside from this pipe system, of course, this pipe system, they are there because they should be able to collect this excess fluid from the all the other tissues in the body, right? But again, there is a need to check. There should be checkpoints where the body can detect if the lymph fluid being transferred from the tissues, excess fluids being transferred from the tissues back into the blood circulation has no foreign or bad substances, then you would need your sentinel filtration areas. So this would be your lymph nodes. And aside from the lymph nodes, you would also have your bigger organs such as your spleen, okay, and your thymus, okay. So again, your um, lymphoid organs are like the filtration uh, areas where this afferent lymphatic vessels travel into in order to have the lymphatic fluid that is coursing through them, have it checked. And then if it passes it, or if the lymphoid cells within these lymph nodes, spleen, etc. Sorry, for the spleen actually is quite special because instead of filtering or checking for antigens and pathogenic things in the lymph, the spleen is a specialized lymphoid organ because it functions to filter the blood instead. Anyway, later we will talk about that. But I hope you appreciate that that's the purpose of your lymphoid organs. They are there, they are very specialized in detecting and neutralizing these bad pathogens that uh, may attack the animal body. Okay? And in order to do that, they would need the presence of your epithelial tissue, because this epithelial tissue, a lot of cells in the lymphoid organs are actually not 100% epithelial tissue. They would be epithelioid. Again, when something is oid, it means it is like that organ, or it is, it can be classified as that organ, but it's quite specialized that you cannot 100% say that it is still that specific tissue. Okay. And then, of course, we have our connective tissue, because as what we have learned in the previous organ systems, our connective tissue is required because usually they are the ones that build the stroma of your organs, and they are the ones which create the architectural subdivisions of the organ. Okay? And of course, we also have our muscle tissue. As we will learn later, these muscle tissues usually, when they are found in the layers or substructures of our organs, it's either to provide a firm yet still flexible supportive function, or if there is a need for that organ to contract or squeeze out its contents. Okay? So, I think you will remember this photo from our Beta 105 Microscopic Anatomy 1 class. And here, what I want you to appreciate is that majority, if not all, of the organs of our lymphoid system is supported by a very specific connective tissue. And this would be your reticular fibers. So in essence, these reticular fibers, they are quite special, especially in the context of the slides that will be examined in the laboratory. Okay? So unlike the other organ systems that we talked about, which is usually their fibers, their collagen fibers are quite strong and resilient, and the collagen type that composes them, especially for example in your cartilages that we talked about before, um, they are either comprised of your type 1 or your type 2 collagen. Remember, the type 2 collagen is like the default type of collagen that is still a little bit bendable, that is found in all of your cartilage types. And then type 1, it's the one that is rigid and quite resistant to high stress. That's the one that you find in the fibrocartilage. Remember that? And now we are introducing the type 3 collagen, which is the most kind of weak among the three collagen fibers. That's why organs which are supported by these reticular fibers made up of type 3 collagens are quite weak. In references, you would read this as friable. Oh, what does friable mean? Oh, it's not something that you can fry in oil, ha? It means what? If you pinch it or if you manipulate it with your bare hands, it can be crushed easily. Okay, that's what friable means. In Tagalog, nadudurog agad. Okay, so try to imagine, oh, if I handle a fresh liver, right, if I pinch it with my fingers, then the parenchyma will be crushed and will be broken. And this is opposite with the cartilage, right? Or other, for example, the fascia. Even if you try to tear it with your fingers, so in the gross anatomy lab, it's more difficult, right, in general. So a lot of our visceral organs, which are very soft and friable, quote unquote, it's because the collagen fibers that compose their stroma are very, very weak. This is so because the primary function of the visceral organs usually is not to be supportive, right? They have very specialized cells. So in the story of the lymphoid organs, their function is to just support the lymphocytes, its precursors, and its mature cells. Okay, that's why these visceral organs, which are very soft, they need an outer uh, casing of more uh, solid and stronger structure. So, for example, in the viscera of within the chest cavity, or you have the ribs naman to protect it. Okay, but of course, in the peritoneal area, it's another story, right? Okay. So, aside from these reticular fibers, so again, guys, another thing, these reticular fibers, they are not usually visualized by routine H&E staining. That's why in the laboratory, you would need to especially choose the slides that have been specially stained with silver stain, because these silver-based stains are the ones that stick to these reticular fibers. Okay? So again, the reticular fibers are named as such because R-E-T-E, means net-like. Okay? So throughout the the semester, whenever you hear the word reticular, think of it as something that is net-like. Okay? And of course, aside from these reticular fibers, you would also find your epithelioid cells. Okay, so these epithelial-like cells, they function in order to form a filtration system or a solid, uh, not solid, like a barrier system that would sequester, for example, the mature lymphocytes from the immature lymphocytes. Okay, so they play a very strategic role within your um, lymphoid organ. So usually they are stellate shaped because their processes are needed in order to form these net-like structures together with your reticular fibers. So this photo here, oh, it was taken under which type of microscope? Most probably, yes, electron microscope. And what type of electron microscope? Scanning, because if it's 3D, it's your scanning electron microscope. Okay, and here you can see that if it is not specially stained by your silver-based stains, you will not be able to see these reticular fibers. So, in H&E staining, you can see just the majority of the lymphocytes and your epithelial or your reticular cells. Okay? Another stain that can be used to stain these reticular fibers is your periodic acid shift stain. So if the fibers are pinkish or magenta or purplish, then it would be your past state. And I think we have actual slides in the laboratory. So for the reporting groups, please do not forget to show your past stained uh, lymph nodes or spleen. I think lymph nodes in the lab, and as well compare it with your silver based stained slides. Okay. Okay, so aside from your lymphocytes or reticular cells, in the thymus, there are also the presence of other structures such as your Hazel's corpuscle. Okay, I don't know, for the longest time I read this as Hazel's corpuscle, but I searched how it should be pronounced, so it should be Hazel's corpuscle. As in, naha-hustle ka na ba sa dami ng parts ng ating lymphoid uh, organ system. But anyway, these Hassel's corpuscles are also called as your thymic corpuscles. We will be talking more about that in detail later. First, let's try to think, the organs of our lymphatic system. Among the two architectural categories of our organs, which is it? It is your, of course, it's your parenchymatous, right? Because it doesn't have a big lumen or cavity within it, okay? And for the function of our immune system or lymphatic system, basically its main goal is to protect all the rest of the body systems against foreign agents, the non-self. And these foreign agents can be living, it can be your bacteria or your viruses. And the main difference between your bacteria and viruses, guys, I want you to appreciate this, is that the bacteria usually attack or do their damage extracellularly outside of the cell, while the viruses, they would do their damage to the cells of your animal body intracellularly, because the main function of your virus is to inject material into the cell in order to hijack, bubudulin niya, okay, yung cell, yung native cell ng body in order to produce proteins that would harm the body. So it's intracellular for the virus and extracellular for the bacteria. And these plays a big role later, because you will see that specific cells of the lymphoid system is specialized to battle against the extracellular bacteria and some cells of our lymphoid system is specialized to go against the intracellular insult of your viruses. Okay? For the non-living, of course, we have our toxins as well. Okay? Usually these toxins, they are produced by your bacteria. Okay? So first, let's talk about how these lymph nodes uh, are and other parts of the other organs which compose your lymphatic system develop. So, during the embryonic stage, you would have these sacs, which would have different names depending on which area of the body they are. So you can see you have your jugular sac because technically it is near the jugular area of the animal. And then you would have your cisterna chyli and your retroperitoneal lymph sac, which will eventually grow and form into the lymphatic vessels and lymph nodes and lymph organs in the thoracic area or as well as in the peritoneal abdominal area. They are specialized to send out or to serve the visceral organs, okay? While the iliac lymph sac will be later specialized and developed in order to serve the lower part of the body as well as the appendages. So it's like that. The upper area for this part is for the central area, and this part is for the lower area. Okay? So again, as all the other parts of developing parts of the embryo, they would just elongate and form subdivisions and eventually become more complicated. But the key point is that they should be able to um, create its connection with the venous system because again, after all the filtration is said and done, the cleaned up lymph fluid should go back in the circulatory system. Okay, so here you can see how complicated it will develop later when the animal turns into an adult. Okay, so how does the immune system develop? What's so special about the cells of the immune system is that it needs different sub areas of the body for the different stages of its cells. Okay, so all the cells of the immune or lymphoid organs actually would come from your bone marrow because this is where the hematopoietic stem cells are. Remember, that's in our Veta 105. So for those who have already forgotten this, I highly suggest to watch the Veta 105 hematopoietic tissue lesson. Okay? And then in here in the hematopoietic stem cells, some of them will become members of your circulating blood system. And some of the members there are also part of your immune system, right? So you would have your granulocytes, right? While for the lymphoid progenitor cells, they will become your T cells and your B cells. Okay? So this one is the what we will see in our organs that we will be discussing for today. Okay? So for the process of lymphopoiesis, when we say poiesis, as what we have said before, it's the root word poem. Diba? When you are writing a poem, you are like conjuring ideas and abstract ideas into words. So something from nothing. Okay? So you are producing lymphatic cellular members from nothing. Quote unquote nothing. So anyway, in the bone marrow, you would have your hematopoietic stem cells, which will eventually turn into your lymphoid progenitor cells. These lymphoid progenitor cells will actually go to your thymus as well into your other organs, okay, where they will further develop into a more specialized versions, okay. So as you can see, the organs as your thymus, your spleen, and your lymph nodes, they are like containers in other parts of your body that are waiting to be populated by the stem cells from the bone marrow, which means during the development, if something goes wrong with the bone marrow of the animal, it is highly possible that these containers of your organs made up of your stroma, the connective tissue, then they can become empty. Di ba? So, think about that. Okay? Anyway, if in the normal case, when your stem cells, your hematopoietic uh, lymphoid progenitor cells are able to travel into these lymphoid organs and then populate there and do their job there, then this is where they will become mature and become immunocompetent. It is here, especially in the thymus, where a lot of our T cells will be taught to detect the antigens coming from the body, because the primary function of our immune system is to fight against the foreign antigens and not the self. Because if they are not taught well or primed well, they will what? They will fight the actual antigens of the body, and this abnormality is not rare actually. This gives rise to what? Autoimmune diseases, right? So that's why failure of the proper priming or teaching of this our cells to detect what is the actual body antigens and the foreign antigens is very important. Okay. So in the thymus, they will be thymocytes, and these thymocytes, once they have been primed to detect the non-self only, they will become your mature T cells. And these mature T cells, they will then travel to other sentinel areas, filtration areas such as your spleen and your lymph nodes and your other uh, associated lymphatic tissues throughout the body. Okay? So it means your lymph nodes, your spleen, and so that's what differentiates your primary lymphatic organs from your secondary lymphatic organs. Okay, the primary or lymphatic organs are usually the ones that produce and prime, teach your lymphoid cells uh, what they will do. Okay, and that is to be able to discern whether an antigen is the body's antigen, so it's normal, you don't have to fight it, versus if it's an enemy. Okay, so for the primary again, we have the bone marrow, wherein all the immature progenitor cells of your lymphoid system comes from. And then in the birds, you would have your, or avians, you would have your bursa of Abrasius, and of course, your thymus. So after all the cells have been produced and developed and primed and taught how to differentiate, again, self from non-self, they will be transferred into our secondary lymphatic organs such as your lymph node, your spleen. So lymph node basically filters the lymphatic fluid. Okay? So no blood. For the blood filtration or checking, that is the specialty of the spleen. And of course, we have our diffuse type of secondary filtration area, which is diffuse means it's just, it doesn't have a capsule, and it's just distributed throughout the areas of the body, which has a very high chance of contact into the outside world. So if you think about it, what are these areas? This would be your mucosa. Anywhere that there is a layer that is exposed to the outside world, aka your lumen, right? So for this mucosal associated lymphatic tissue, aka mouth, you would have subtypes depending on where that mucosal layer is located. You would have your galt or gut associated. So if you see these nodules or diffuse lymphatic um, tissue underneath, usually the epithelial layer of your mucosa, anywhere along the segment of your GIT. We will be learning more about this later in our GIT topic. So you would call it your gut associated. If it is somewhere near your respiratory system, the term for it is a bronchus associated or bronchial associated uh, lymphatic tissue. And of course, uh, another version of your diffuse would be your tonsils. Maybe you already have an idea of your tonsils, and this is actually found in the alimentary tract, in the initial segments, right, in the throat area. So again, later we will be talking more about structure of these secondary lymphoid organs. Okay? So, sorry, for the tonsil, we have your palatine, those that are found in the palate, and you would have your lingual as well as your pharyngeal. And if you would analyze, these three areas are found in the near the opening of where air, particulate matter such as your food is ingested, right? So again, these are sentinel areas, and the goal is to prevent noxious substances, bad substances, from even entering the deeper areas of the body. Okay? Again, again, in all of these secondary organs, only the lymph node and the spleen are encapsulated, and the rest here is not encapsulated. So again, when you say encapsulated, there is the presence of which type of tissue? Yes, your connective tissue, okay? Your dense, irregular connective tissue made up of your mostly your type 2 collagen fibers, okay? Kasi inside them, you would have again your type 3 collagen forming the reticular fibers. Okay? So again, these primary organs, they're the ones that form your B cells and T cells, and when they mature, okay, the B cells mature in the bursa fabricius and the T cells mature in the thymus. Okay? Or, yeah, correct. Okay, so first, let's talk about the histological features of our primary organs. Okay, okay, so for the bone marrow, oh, we are ready. This is just a review, no? Uh, these are the immune-related cells, and here are usually the ones that should only be seen in the peripheral blood circulation, right? And we said before that these different immune cells, their immature versions are found within the bone marrow, right? And then we are able to identify these still developing cells based on the color of their nucleus and the size of their nucleus, right? So these immature lymphatic cells, they would usually have your dark blue and very big nuclei in relation with the cytoplasm. So the cytoplasm is usually scanty, diba? Scanty means just a little amount remains. So in histological slides, these cells, usually they would be really dark staining and they will look like dots, small dots. But of course, if they become more mature, they will be transferred to the circulating blood, which is found in the arteries and veins, right? So again, all of this function as your in the immune function of the body. Okay. In our case, we will usually just see this type. Okay, the lymphocytes. Again, big nuclei, dark bluish staining, and very little cytoplasm, scanty cytoplasm, and the shape is usually circular. Okay. Um, there are different types of lymphocytes actually. You would have your small and then you will have your big lymphocytes, and usually the small lymphocytes, they are usually the ones that are almost as big as your RBCs. So when you examine your histological slides or before, if you will remember in the smears, if you see cells that look like this and are just as big as your RBCs, so 6 to 9 micrometers and the average 8 micrometers, they would be your small lymphocytes. And then, of course, later you will realize as we talk about it that you would have your T type, your B type, etc. And in reality, guys, in H&E stained sections, you will not be able to differentiate based on the cellular shape. Okay, we will be able to just assume that they are that type of cells because we know that different compartments of these organs would house the different types of your lymphocytes. But in reality, we would be needing what? The use of our special stain, the one that needs your antibodies? Yes, your immunohistochemistry. So to be very sure, so that we are able to differentiate if it is a B cell or a T cell, we would be needing our immunohistochemistry. Okay? So don't forget that. So first, let's go to the thymus. So we're finished with the bone marrow, then let's go to the thymus. For those who are taking up macroscopic anatomy, the thymus, a very developed thymus, is usually just seen in your young animals or immature animals because it is at this stage we're in, there's still a need for the thymus for the priming of our T cells, right? And eventually, the goal is for the thymus to create enough population of your primed immunocompetent T cells and then distribute it to the other secondary organs. And when that happens, usually around puberty, then it has not much of a big function in the body. So what it will do is it will just involute or become smaller. Okay, this is so because especially the T cells, they are really they have a very long lifespan. Okay, and actually the thymus is a very busy organ. It has a very high metabolic capacity. So the body plan is to have it do its function first in the initial stages of the animal, and then eventually when it has done its function, then it will just involute so that it will not take up more of the body's energy or something like that. But of course, there are exceptions to the rule, no? Depending on what the animal requires. Okay, so I hope during your dissection you are able to see the thymus here. Okay, again in younger animals where there is still a very active priming of your T cells. Again, what I said earlier, there is a training system wherein they are taught to detect what is part of the body and what is not part of the body. So, as with all other organs of the lymphoid system, the thymus would have the presence of your lobules. Actually, the lobules is just for the thymus. Sorry. The one that was I was talking about is the presence of your outer cortex and your inner medulla. Okay? So you would have your lobules. So these lobules is usually um, the septa or the connective tissue that divides this lobule may or may be complete or incomplete, such as in these areas. Okay? And this is very characteristic of your thymus. And here you can see that the cortex is darker stained than your medulla. That is so because the cortex has a higher concentration of your T cells because the training area is in the cortex. Okay, so this is where they are detecting whether the T cell is already able to detect self from non-self. And if they pass this test, they are then delegated into the medullary area, okay, where they will eventually be transferred into, sent their way into the other secondary organs. So as you can see, only a few or small fraction of the cells in the cortex will pass this test because if they don't pass it, they will just be destroyed by the cortical cells. Okay, so the thymocytes, okay, they will go here in the middle area if they pass it, and there are fewer cells that pass the test, thus giving the lighter appearance of the medulla. Okay, and in the medullary area, that is also where you will see this pink onion-like structures of whorls or spirals of your epithelial-like cells, and the function, these are called as your thymic corpuscles, aka your Hassel's corpuscle, as we said earlier, and the function of these cells is to produce cytokines, which would further help the maturations of the T cells that have quote-unquote passed the test in the cortical area. So again, you will have an idea, if I see this under the microscope and the cortical area is thicker or the medullary area is thinner, does that mean that there is a uh, lower rate of maturing of our T cells? So you can infer that, okay? So here again, you would see that in the cortical area, so they are sequestrated here until they pass the immunocompetence priming, and they will be brought down to the medullary area where they will be furthermore primed and prepared to go into the other tissues of the body, or into the lymph nodes, or into the spleen, or into the other gut mucosal associated lymphatic tissue. Again, this would be your T cells. Okay. And another feature of your thymus is that again, it is encapsulated, okay, by your dense irregular connective tissue. Okay. So here is a close-up of the Hassel's corpuscle or your thymic corpuscles that is only seen in the medullary area, and this is one telltale characteristic of your thymus. You will only be seeing this in your thymic tissue, not in the lymph node and not in the spleen. So if you see this structure under the microscope, then it is your clue that you are looking at a thymus. Okay? So again, these thymic corpuscles are composed of your epithelial cells, and some of them would contain your keratohyalin. So if they become more mature, there will be a pinkish glassy appearance of the central area of your thymic corpuscles. Okay? So again, other photos. So again, you would have your lobes, and then you would have your cortex and your medulla. Okay? And here, in the right panel, you would see that once again the animal reaches its puberty and it has already produced a lot of your immunocompetent T cells, and you have already sent this out in its way to the other secondary lymphoid organs, then there is no more need for it, so it will involute, okay, as the animal becomes an adult. And in replacement of uh, these lobules, you would have the presence of what type of tissue? Yes, it's a connective type, and it's special. It is your, oh, look closely, it has your signet cell ring appearance. It's your adipose tissue. Okay. Next, we have our bursa of Fabricius, and again, this is only for your avian species. Your bursa of Fabricius is seen in the dorsal area near your cloacal area, and it looks like this, okay? And for the reporters, we have sections of bursa of Fabricius in the laboratory. I think both in the virtual histology as well as the actual slides, okay? And if you open it up, it is composed of folds. And again, when there are folds, guys, what's the purpose? It is to, yes, it is to increase the surface area, to maximize the area of point of contact of the possible antigens with your uh, inflammatory cells, okay, or lymphoid cells. So subgrossly, it will look like this. Again, there's a lot of foldings, okay. And here, the key telltale sign that you are looking at the bursa of Fabricius is because the lining epithelium is pseudo-stratified columnar. Okay? Among the lymphoid organs that we will be studying, at least in this organ system, it is only the bursa of Fabricius that is lined by your pseudo-stratified columnar epithelium. Okay? But still, you will see that the B cells here are also located into your nodules. Okay? And again, in some areas, there would be the darker area and the lighter area. And again, it gives you an idea that, the darker areas, this is still the training ground. And if as they are maturing, they become lighter in color because there are fewer cells that pass the test of this immunocompetency. Okay? So here. Again, technically, these nodules are like your mucosal associated lymphatic structures, right? So later, try to compare this with our mouths, okay? Now let's go to the secondary organs, okay? Let's go to the lymph node and the spleen. Lymph nodes. So the lymph nodes are basically your pit stops. Okay, these are the filtration areas where the afferent lymphatic vessels. So, for example, all the lymphatic fluids from this area will drain to this lymph node. All the lymphatic fluids from this area will drain to this lymph node, etc. Okay, so there are like the satellite offices with which there is a high population of your checking cells. Okay, so uh, the characteristic feature of your lymph nodes is the presence of multiple afferent vessels, lymphatic vessels. Okay, so afferent means going into the organ, right? So afferent goes into the organ. Efferent means exiting away from the organ. Okay. So again, for the lymph node, its special characteristic is the presence of your afferent vessels going into the outer edge of the lymph node. So for the lymph node, the flow of the lymph, for in order for it to be filtered, is from the outer edge. So it will enter, the lymph will enter the afferent lymph vessels, and it will go to the subcapsular sinuses. And inside it, it will then go into the cortical area where the nodules are for checking. Okay. And then after being filtered, and after the possible antigenic substances are caught by the lymphoid cells there, then your more clean lymphatic fluid will then exit back into the efferent vessels, and it will go back to your venous system. Okay, so here in the cortical area, this is where you would have your um, lymphatic nodules. And here, a key point of your cortical area is the presence of your nodules. And a telltale sign that your lymphoid is actively uh, battling an infection is the presence of your secondary lymphoid uh, nodules. Because your primary lymphoid nodules, it will just be containing your um, immature B cells, so they are not yet primed. But again, once they are primed and they are forced to become immunocompetent and active, it will form a lighter staining central area. So again, this is your primary lymphoid nodules and this is your secondary lymphoid nodules. And the presence of your secondary lymphoid nodules is a sign that the lymph node is active. Okay? So after the cells here are primed, they will go into the medullary area. So your mature B cells and T cells will actually be here where they will exert their actual filtration of the lymphoid fluid. Okay. After the cortical area, you would have, so in this area, the cortex area, majority of the um, lymphocytes here are B cells. And then in the paracortical area or the layer before the medulla, this part, you would have your, this is where the T cells from your thymus actually travel to. So this area, okay. And this is where your T cells are, okay. And then in the medullary area, that's the combination of your T cells, B cells, even your macrophages. Okay? Um, it's amazing how the lymph node would have different areas, no? Because the B cells mostly they will turn into what? Your plasma cells, and these plasma cells are actually the ones that produce your, yes, your antibodies, right? And these antibodies, their specialization is against the extracellular type of insults, aka your bacteria, right? While your T cells in the paracortical area, they are ones that are against your intracellular insults, aka your viruses. Okay? So please do not forget those. So again, it is quite difficult to identify the different subtypes of your lymphocytes based on their actual cellular structure. But we can assume because we know where the compartments are in the lymph node. Okay? So again, here is a zoomed in of your medullary area, and you can see you would have your sinuses, and you would have your lymphoid cells, and you will also have your macrophages. And then, especially interesting in our case, since we are veterinarians and we are dealing with more than one species, the pig lymph node is quite special because it does not follow this default system of the outer area having your nodules in the cortical area. Okay, for the pig, it's inverted. Okay, the cortical area or the nodular areas are in the central, in the deeper area of the lymph node, while the medullary area is in the outer part. Okay, which means the pig lymph node is quite special because the afferent lymphatic vessels will have to travel deeper into the middle area of the lymph node, so it will have a longer time of passage into the filtrating system before it can eventually be uh, put out, or filtered material can go out of the lymph node. That's why, in the meat inspection industry, the lymph nodes of the pigs are very, very important areas of checking whether the animal has an infection, because it can grow really big because it has a very efficient way of filtering. Okay? So, we actually have pig lymph node section in the laboratory. So please take your time to compare them with the other species lymph node and try to see that, all right, the lymph nodes of the other species, the cortical areas, the lymphatic nodules are in the periphery, while in the pig, it's in the central area. And that is why also the lymph nodes of the other species would have this bean-shaped structure, because the outer area and the inner area is where the funnel system will work. So afferent to efferent. While the pig would have a more globular or no distinct hilar area because it doesn't have the same structure as this one. Okay? So if you have enemies and you want to insult them, you can tell them, oh, your lymph nodes are inverted, and they wouldn't know. They wouldn't understand. Diba? Only you, a veterinary student, will get that. But anyway, moving on to the spleen. Again, the spleen is quite special among the lymphoid organs because instead of primarily filtering or making sure that the lymphatic fluid is clear, the spleen is the one that is responsible for making sure that the blood is clean. Okay, not the lymphatic fluid but the blood, and also it is the one that is responsible for clearing out the dead RPCs and also supplying it with fresh ones. Okay, again, grossly, the spleen is located somewhere here, okay, near the stomach, and if you cut it, you will see that you would have your white spots among red areas, and histologically it will translate as like this. The white spots are white because they contain your white blood cells, right? Specifically your lymphocytes, right? So this would be your white pulp. These are the white spots here. And then in between, you would have your red pulp. Okay? And the organization of the cells within your spleen is, of course, your lymphatic nodules will be delegated into the white pulp area. So this area. And this is where the artery which brings the blood to be filtered into the spleen will actually branch off into smaller branches. And at the center of each of these nodules, you would have your central arteries, which sometimes in histological preparations will not be technically in the center, because if there is a need for the formation of more um, T cells, the peripheral area or peripheral articular lymphatic sheaths surrounding it will expand, and sometimes the central arteriole will be delegated to the side, and that's okay. That's normal. So as you can see here in the spleen again, there are still delegated areas. So your peripheral arterial sheaths or pulse will contain your T cells, and the outer lighter area of your white pulp would contain your B cells. Okay, and again, they function to filter out the bad and foreign substances, noxious substances that may have been trapped in the blood, in the blood. Okay. Um, Also, if this also this white pulp will also contain your macrophages that will eat and digest, phagocytose the dead uh, RBCs that have reached the end of their life cycle. Okay, so some references would consider the spleen as the graveyard of dead erythrocytes or RBCs. Again, aside from harboring this dead or clearing out this dead RBCs, your spleen is also like a reservoir for some animals. Okay? So here, other parts of the spleen, it is also encapsulated, and the capsule of your spleen is thickest as compared with your lymph node and your thymus. Okay? And then here, you will see that this capsule can actually go deeper into the parenchyma of your spleen, wherein they will change their name. They will be called as your trabecula already. And again, you have your white pulp and your red pulps, and within the white pulp, you would have your central arteriole surrounded by your pulse or uh, your periarterial lymphatic sheath, and the other peripheral white pulp. Okay, and again, the ratio of the white pulp from the red pulp can give you an idea of what is the current uh, requirements, physiological requirements of the animal. Okay, so here again, you have your central arterioles, and this is your pulse and the peripheral white pulp. And then in the red pulp, you would have your splenic cords and your splenic sinuses. And as what we have said earlier, these sinuses usually they are your capillaries. What type of capillaries? Your sinusoidal type of capillaries. Okay. In some references, they would say that some specific animals would have your storage type of spleen, wherein the main role of that spleen is to be able to store RBCs. So in storage type of spleens, there is a bigger proportion of your red pulp as compared with your white pulp. While if the type of the spleen is defensive, defense against your noxious pathogens, you would have a bigger uh, proportion of your white pulp. Okay, but other references would argue that the in a lifetime of the animal, depending on its physiological requirements, it can be sometimes storage form, sometimes it can be defense form, and sometimes it can be in the middle of the two or intermediate type. So in the laboratory, we actually have actual slides that are uh, in defense mode or in storage mode. Okay, some animals would usually have more of a storage type. They say references would say the horse, dog, and cat would have these. That's why when there is in periods of high stress, no, so some hormones will trigger the smooth muscles of your trabecula to squeeze out the reticulocytes or the RBCs here into the peripheral bloodstream. Okay, in order to help more to provide oxygen for whatever physiological function that it requires. But usually in the clinical setting, this translates to what? For example, if you are handling or restraining the animal, so they are stressed. So what happens is what there will be an artifactual increase in the number of reticulocytes in the circulating bloodstream. So again, that's the clinical story for the spleen. Okay. All right, now let's go to the diffuse type or our mucosal associated lymphatic tissue, which can be found in the gut, and thus it will be termed as GALT or gut associated. So usually they are seen in the submucosa of specific segments of your intestine. So here, specifically in the ileum, you would have your gullet here. And of course, it has a special name if it's termed as your Peyer's patch as well. And then, of course, you will also have the diffuse version, not formed into nodules. So this is usually seen in the lamina propria of the individual villi of your mucosa of your gut. Here, you can see they are actually located. Basically, they look like what? The lymphoid nodules that are also seen in the cortex of your lymph nodes, right? So, I hope by now that you realize that whenever you see a clump of blue staining, highly nucleated, nuclear cells, you are most probably looking at a lymphoid tissue, and that this lymphoid tissue are ubiquitously distributed across the different surfaces of the body aside from the um, factory filtration areas, that is your lymph node and your uh, spleen. Okay, so whenever there is an opening across the alimentary tract, then you will see that there is the possibility of seeing these filtration sentinel areas harboring your immune cells, which the goal is to, even before the foreign substances go deeper into the circulation, they will be able to filter them out and keep them out or destroy them. Okay? In the respiratory system, usually in the bronchus area, we will be talking more about this in the respiratory system. But for now, I want you to appreciate that you can also see this clump of lymphoid cells. Okay? And again, they are seen in the lamina propria or maybe in the submucosal layer of that organ, just beneath the epithelial layer or the mucosa, epithelial layer of the mucosa. Okay? So they are usually seen in the bronchular area because again, the idea is to catch these pathogens even before they go into the deeper areas of the lungs. Okay? So here you can see your belt. Okay? Whenever there is blue, it means there is lymphoid tissue. And if the area is not supposed to have this lymphoid tissues and you see a clump of blue, it means what? There is the abnormal localization or clumping of your lymphatic uh, immune cells somewhere that is not supposed to be. Then this means danger. Okay, so if you become histopathologist in the future and you see these nodule-like structures in areas where they are not supposed to be, this is your clue that something is wrong. There can be either an inflammation or the formation of your immune system tumor cells. Okay, but that's why it's important that when it is in the correct areas of the body, then it is normal. Okay, and since these diffuse unencapsulated lymphoid organs do not have your afferent vessels, such as in your lymph nodes, the ability of the lymphocytes in this lymphoid nodules to receive your antigens rests on the presence of your M cells. Okay, so these M cells, they are part of the epithelial cells that is directly near these nodules. So for example, if this is in the GIT, the M cells will be part of the simple columnar epithelium there. M means microfold cells, okay, because it has a lot of microfolds, because again, the more folds, we are increasing the what? The surface area, so that there is more chance to catch these antigens and bring them inside this lymphoid nodule so they can be processed and they can be neutralized. Okay? And then lastly, we have the tonsils, which are located in the more peripheral areas of the body where usually there is the primary or first contact for outside substances, which is what? your food, right? Because it is the physiological need of the body to eat, ingest foreign substances that of course the primary function is to get the nutrients from that, but we cannot control if some bad substances will actually go together with it. Okay, so for the tonsils, again we have the palatine, pharyngeal, and the lingual. And then the key point of your tonsils is that they also have your nodules. Okay, so this nodular structure is really common among the lymphatic system organs. Okay, lingual, palatine, and pharyngeal. And a key point of your tonsils, especially in the pharyngeal and palatine, is the presence of these very deep invaginations called your crypts. Okay, because do you know what crypts are? In the ancient times in the Western world, usually the dead are buried into deep under what how do I say uh underground uh, cemeteries underneath the churches, and they call those crypts. So any deep structures in the histology, they call it as your crypts. Anyway, so again, what are the crypts for? Oh, these are foldings. These are again to increase the surface area wherein the antigens or noxious substances can be trapped for neutralization. Okay, and of course, in the context of veterinary medicine, we have other species who are more prone to eat more quote-unquote dirty food such as roughages or plant materials wherein there is a higher chance of a bacterial flora, right? The crypts are deeper and more pronounced. So this is especially true with our herbivores which would eat roughages. So whenever you view um, tonsils in the laboratory and you find very deep crypt system, it means the body has adjusted, and it means most probably the uh, the uh, the diet of this animal is more of a roughage or plant material. Okay, so it means in carnivorous animals the tonsillar crypts are not as deep. Okay. What else? So the problem with this script, even though it is increasing the surface area and the higher chances for the antigens to be caught and neutralized by their lymphoid structures, the drawback is what? There's also the higher chance for food particles to be trapped in here, and sometimes it can form infections. That's why um, some uh some animals or even humans, they would what, they would have the calcification of these foreign particles, which we termed as your tonsillar stones. Okay, and if you have extra time and you like viewing icky stuff in the internet, you look for it in YouTube. You type tonsil stones and you will see how big they can get. And oh my gosh, I do not want to imagine how they smell. But usually people who have halitosis or bad breath, sometimes they have tonsillar stones, and it is because of the crypt system of your tonsils. Okay? And if you want to learn about the different tonsillar histological structures of other animal species, here is a QR code of a very, very interesting uh, journal article. And it's really good. If you have extra time, read it. And actually, it's my hope in the future to create a version of this paper that is mostly focused on Philippine endemic animals. So hopefully, cross fingers in the future. I hope you'll be able to read that when you're already in your uh, you're already in the field. Okay, so that's all for the story of our lymphatic system. Please do not forget to sign the attendance or QR code. Again, this is only for the students of first semester school year 2026-2027. If you are somebody from the future, please make sure that you are signing the current attendance form intended for your batch. Okay? And again, we have an online quiz later. Quiz number 5 at 9 p.m. The link will be posted in the Google Classroom. So, thank you, and that's all for this lecture topic.